This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial advice. Consult with a qualified professional before making any investment decisions.
Welcome to the Wire Broker Edition, the week in real estate, presented in digestible bites. Hold on while our AI hosts take us on another ride through this week's top real estate headlines.
All right, broker owners, welcome back to the deep dive.
Yeah,
It is a really interesting week for news.
it is.
I've got to say, I was pretty excited to dig into this pile of reports with it.
Oh, there's a lot in here. It's not just kind of the same old.
Right, yeah, exactly. And you know, we always talk about cutting through that noise and finding the insights that really hit home for you guys running your businesses. So
Exactly. Give you the stuff that you can actually use, not just industry gossip,
right.
so to speak.
Yeah. So let's jump right in. And one of the first things that jumped out at me was just all the different ways brokerages are approaching growth right now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We've got, mergers, we've got affiliations, we've got international expansion. Like it's a real mix.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It's not just like one size fits all.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like different companies are picking the strategy that aligns with, their specific goals and their kind of strengths.
Yeah. Well, and their market too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Like what works in South Florida might not work in, northeastern Colorado.
Exactly.
So let's start with United Real Estate. They've been making some waves in South Florida.
Okay.
Their Charles Rutenberg Realty brand just absorbed Real Estate Authority, bringing in 60 new agents.
That's a pretty good chunk.
Yeah, and this is on top of, CRR already having 1,200 agents and merging with United back in 2019.
So they're already a pretty sizable operation.
Sure, they're building something pretty significant down there.
Yeah.
And Rick Hasse, he's United's president, he even said this is going to add, fuel to their regional expansion.
Oh, wow.
So it seems like they're really committed to dominating that market.
Yeah, it sounds like they're putting a stake in the ground saying
Yeah.
this is where we're going to grow.
Exactly.
Right.
You know what I think is interesting about this particular deal, though, is that it's not just about the numbers.
Right.
It's not just about bringing in 60 new agents. It's about the kind of the human element of it.
Michael Brownell, who is the founder of Real Estate Authority,
Right.
he's not just, fading into the sunset. He's actually becoming CRR's talent attraction specialist.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah. And, he's got 18 years of experience in recruiting.
Oh, wow.
So they're really bringing him in to, make sure that they can continue to attract top talent.
That's smart.
Yeah,
And it's a really competitive market for agents right now. So
it is.
to have someone dedicated to that is huge.
Yeah, and I think it speaks volumes about their strategy.
Yeah.
Michelle Sesser from CRR, she actually said that Brownell's, experience and skills are going to be invaluable assets for their growth. So
Yeah. I mean, it really reinforces that they're not just focused on just sheer numbers.
Right.
Right. They're thinking about the quality of the agents they're bringing in and how to keep them.
Absolutely.
So that's a really interesting contrast, I think, to what Century 21 is doing up in northeastern Colorado.
Okay, how so?
So they've decided to go the affiliation route. They're partnering with an independent brokerage called Cornerstone Brokers, LLC.
Mm-hmm.
It's run by Adam and Mary Walter, a husband and wife team.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, and they've got over 40 years of combined experience
Wow.
in everything from residential to farm and ranch property.
Oh, wow, covering all their bases.
Yeah, and they're covering a lot of ground, too. They're in like 5 different counties up there.
So they really know that market.
Oh, yeah, they're entrenched.
That's awesome.
And so now they're going to operate as Century 21 Cornerstone.
Okay, so they're bringing the brand power
Yeah, exactly.
of Century 21 to this already established local team.
Right. And Adam Walter actually said that he sees Century 21's international network and resources as, potential game changers for them.
So interesting.
To reach new clients and tap into new markets.
Yeah, so they're looking at it as a way to kind of level up,
Right.
take their business to the next level.
Exactly. And Mary Walter, she emphasized their commitment to, respect, integrity, and trust, which are obviously, core values for them as a local business. And now they're bringing those under the Century 21 umbrella.
Yeah, so it's interesting. You've got this kind of this local expertise and these values that they've built their business on, and now they're combining that with, the reach of a global brand.
Right, and it's particularly interesting given that they're in Fort Morgan, Colorado, which is very much an agricultural community.
Yeah, so they've got that connection to the local economy as well.
Right.
So it's kind of a multi-layered approach.
Yeah, it is.
It makes me think about, for our listeners out there, as you're thinking about your own growth strategies,
Right.
are you leaning more towards that united model of like regional consolidation and, kind of building density in a specific area?
Right.
Or are you thinking more about, maybe branching out into new markets through these kinds of strategic partnerships like Century 21 is doing?
Right. I mean, it's a real question of, do you go deep or do you go wide?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's no right or wrong answer. It
Yeah.
really depends on, your individual circumstances and your goals.
Exactly. Your market, your strengths.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's definitely something to think about because both of these approaches are clearly working for these companies.
Yeah, they are.
All right. So moving beyond the domestic market, we also saw the agency making a move internationally.
Oh, okay. Where'd they go?
They opened their first office in Nicaragua.
Wow, Nicaragua. That's interesting.
Yeah, and this comes after they entered Panama last year, so it seems like they're really focusing on Central America.
They're making a play for that region.
Yeah, and they've brought on João Mucciolo as their managing partner there.
Okay.
He's a local agent with almost 10 years of experience, so...
So they're going with someone who knows the market.
Right, exactly. Someone who's already established.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And James Ramsey, he's their EVP of franchise sales, he said that Nicaragua is, gaining international appeal and that they see promising real estate prospects there.
Oh, interesting. So they're not just, chasing volume. They're actually looking at the kind of the fundamentals of the market.
Right. They even mentioned things like excellent schools and, a strong sense of community.
Oh, wow. So they're really thinking about the lifestyle aspects as well.
Right, exactly. They're trying to attract a certain type of buyer.
Yeah, it sounds like they're targeting a very specific niche.
Yeah, and I think that's smart. It's about finding the right fit for your brand and your clientele.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so now for the story that I know everyone's been buzzing about.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
That Wall Street Journal report about Compass potentially acquiring Home Services of America.
Oh, yeah, that was a big one.
Right, and just to remind everyone, Home Services is the parent company of Berkshire Hathaway Home Services.
Yep, one of the biggest names in the game.
Right, I mean, we're talking about over 50,000 agents, nearly $127 billion in sales volume last year.
It's a behemoth.
Yeah, I mean, if this deal were to go through, it would be absolutely massive.
Yeah, it would shake things up for sure.
Like completely reshape the industry.
Absolutely.
But here's the twist.
Yeah, what happened?
Gino Blefari, who's the CEO of Home Services of America, he came out and just completely denied it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he said, quote, "There are no discussions, negotiations, or agreements to sell Home Services," end quote.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty strong statement.
Right. And it wasn't just him. Chris Kelly, another top executive at HSOA, he also denied it.
So they're presenting a united front.
Yeah, and it's so strange because you have this very reputable financial publication reporting advanced talks, and then you have the company that's supposedly being acquired just flatly denying it.
Yeah, it's a really unusual situation.
It is.
And I think it's a really surprising insight for this week.
Yeah.
Because it just shows how much speculation and, maybe even misinformation there is in our industry.
Right.
And I think it's a good reminder for, everyone listening, the broker owners especially, to really be careful about the information that you're consuming.
Right.
And to, not just believe everything you read, especially when it comes to, big decisions that could impact your business.
Right. Always double check your sources.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, who knows what was going on behind the scenes?
Right. Who knows what the journal was basing their report on?
Right.
But it certainly created a lot of buzz.
It did.
And, it put Compass back in the spotlight.
Yeah.
Which, they've been pretty active lately.
Oh, yeah. They've been busy.
With acquisitions and, growing their agent count.
Right. They just acquired at Properties Christie's International Real Estate. And they're also really pushing their private listing network.
Yeah. And, Robert Refkin, their CEO, he's been very vocal about his opposition to the clear cooperation policy.
Right. He's not a fan.
He's not a fan. He wants to see more off-market listings, more exclusive listings.
Right. And just to clarify for everyone, the clear cooperation policy basically requires listings to be shared on the MLS.
Yeah, within a certain time frame.
Right. So it's all about transparency and making sure that all buyers have access to the same information.
Exactly.
But Refkin seems to think that there's value in keeping some listings private.
Yeah, he's got a different philosophy.
Right.
And, it's interesting because it kind of goes against the grain of what a lot of the industry is moving towards.
Right.
But, he's betting on a different approach.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
It will.
Okay, so let's talk about some leadership changes now.
Okay.
Sharon Srivatsa is stepping down as president of Real Brokerage.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but he's not leaving the company.
Okay, so where's he going?
He's joining their board of directors.
Oh, interesting. So moving to a more strategic role.
Exactly, and this is effective June 1st.
Okay.
And, Srivatsa has been a really influential figure at Real Brokerage.
Yeah, he's overseen a lot of growth.
Yeah, they had their first billion-dollar revenue year in 2024.
Wow.
And they've seen almost 80% growth in their agent count.
That's huge.
Yeah, so he's definitely leaving big shoes to fill.
He is. But what's interesting is that it seems like it's a very positive transition.
Yeah.
Dmir Poleg, the CEO, he expressed a lot of gratitude for Srivatsa's contributions.
Mm-hmm.
And Srivatsa himself said that, it's bittersweet.
Right.
But he's confident in the leadership team, and he wants to be able to support Real in a bigger capacity.
Right. And he specifically talked about wanting to be the agent's voice on the board.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And, he's a big believer in their cloud-based revenue share model.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about, wanting to provide strategic guidance during this time of, rapid change in the industry.
Yeah, so it sounds like he's not stepping back. He's just stepping up.
Right, exactly.
To a different level.
Exactly.
And I think that's a really interesting move. It's not often that you see an executive make that kind of transition.
Right, but it makes sense, when you think about the challenges and opportunities facing the industry right now. You need that high-level strategic thinking.
Yeah.
So this is a really nice contrast, I think, to what we're seeing at the agency, where they're actually bringing in new executives from outside the company.
Oh, okay, so they're going the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Who do they bring in?
So they hired Zane Burnett as their new EVP of digital strategy.
Oh, wow, digital strategy. That's a hot topic.
Oh, yeah, and Burnett comes from ReChat, which is an AI-powered agent platform.
Oh, interesting. So he's got that tech background.
Yeah, and he's also held roles at Willis Allen, Elaine Pinel, and Fillmore Real Estate. So
he's got a lot of experience in the industry.
Oh, yeah, he's a veteran.
Yeah.
And his focus is going to be on, enhancing the agency's digital presence through AI and automation.
Oh, wow. So they're really doubling down on technology.
Yeah, they are.
And it makes sense. I mean, the technology is becoming so crucial for brokerages.
It is.
Both to attract agents and to provide, top-notch service to clients.
Exactly.
So I think this is a smart move by the agency.
Yeah, I think so too.
Bringing in someone with Burnett's expertise is only going to make them stronger.
Yeah. And they also brought in Peter Ianos as their new head of operations for core services.
Okay, core services, what does that entail?
So he's going to be focused on expanding their offerings in mortgage, escrow, title insurance, and relocation services.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So they're really trying to build out that whole ecosystem.
Yeah, they're going for that one-stop shop approach.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing more and more brokerages doing this.
Right.
Because it just makes sense. You can provide a more seamless experience for your clients.
Right.
And you can capture more revenue opportunities.
Right. Exactly.
So it's a win-win.
Yeah, and Ianos has over 20 years of experience in the industry.
Wow, he's a seasoned pro.
Yeah, including 12 years at Engel & Volker's Americas.
Oh, yeah. So he knows what he's doing.
He does.
That's awesome.
All right, so let's talk about the big elephant in the room.
Okay, what's that?
The Rocket Redfin deal.
Oh, yeah, that potential acquisition.
Right. It's still just a proposal, but it's got everyone talking.
Oh, yeah, because it could really shake things up.
Yeah. I mean, if it goes through, it would create this massive integrated company.
Yeah, combining lending, brokerage listings, title services.
Right. Like a true one-stop shop for real estate.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that it would put them in direct competition with Zillow.
Oh, yeah, head-to-head.
Yeah, because Zillow has been trying to build that same kind of super app experience.
Right.
Where you can do everything in one place.
Exactly. And Mike Del Prete, who's an industry analyst, he actually said that this could be the first real competitor to Zillow's dominance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it's not just Zillow. They'd also be competing with CoStar and their Homes.com portal.
So it's really going to heat up the competition in the online real estate space.
Yeah. And what the biggest questions that this deal raises is what's going to happen to commission structures.
Right, because that's a big concern for a lot of agents.
It is. And James Dwiggins, who's the CEO of Next Home, he suggested that Rocket might use their lending power to offer discounted commissions to buyers who finance through them.
So they'd be using the mortgage as leverage.
Right.
To get people to use their brokerage services.
Exactly. And if that happens, it could put a lot of downward pressure on traditional commission models.
Yeah, it could really squeeze agents.
It could. And Dwiggins' advice to agents was basically, you need to get really good at articulating your value.
Yeah, because if you can't justify your commission,
Right.
then you're going to be in trouble.
Right. And I think that's a really important point for everyone to keep in mind.
It is.
You know, whether or not this deal goes through,
Right.
the industry is changing.
It is.
And agents need to be prepared to adapt.
Absolutely. And it's not just about commissions. It's about the whole way that we do business.
Right.
Technology is changing things. Consumer expectations are changing things.
Exactly.
So we need to be able to evolve.
Right. And this whole situation is definitely causing some anxiety, especially for smaller brokerages and independent lenders.
Yeah, because they don't have the same kind of scale and resources
Right.
as these big players.
Right. And it's hard to compete with that.
It is, but what's interesting is that some people are actually seeing this as an opportunity.
Yeah.
Sherry Riano, she said that this is a wake-up call for smaller firms to really refine their strategies and focus on their strengths.
Right.
Things like personalized service,
Yeah.
deep local market knowledge,
Right.
building those strong relationships with clients.
Right. And those are things that the big guys can't always replicate.
Exactly.
So it's about finding your niche and really excelling in it.
Yeah, I think that's key.
Yeah.
You can't be everything to everyone,
Right.
but you can be the best at something.
Exactly. And that's what's going to set you apart.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this whole conversation about, evolving business models and competitive pressures, it really reminds me of something that Steve Murray said about the history of real estate brokerage firms.
Oh, yeah, Steve Murray. He's always got great insights.
He does. He's been around forever.
Yes.
And he pointed out that there's this recurring pattern where you have these new competitors who come in with these innovative business models.
Yeah.
And they disrupt the market leaders.
Yeah, it happens time and time again.
It does. I mean, think about Century 21 and Coldwell Banker back in the day.
Yeah, they were the big dogs.
They were. And then Remax came along with their 100% commission structure.
Yeah, and that changed everything.
It did. And then Keller Williams with their profit sharing. And then AGXP Realty with their cloud-based revenue sharing.
Yeah, and each time it shakes things up.
It does. And Murray's point is that the initial appeal of these new models eventually fades.
Right.
What he calls the shiny penny effect.
Yeah, it's always exciting at first.
It is, but what really matters is sustained growth.
Right.
And that requires strong leadership and the ability to adapt.
Yeah, you got to be able to evolve with the market.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he also made this really interesting observation
What was that?
that no firm that has lost its leading position has ever fully regained it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, once you fall behind,
It's hard to catch back up.
it is. And I think that's a really sobering thought.
It is, yeah.
But it also highlights the importance of being proactive,
Right.
of anticipating change and not being afraid to experiment.
Yeah, you got to stay ahead of the curve.
Exactly.
And be willing to take risks.
Right. And I think that's a perfect segue into our last topic,
That's it.
which is diversification.
Oh, diversification. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we saw a great example of this with Rory S. Coakley of Coakley Realty.
Okay, what are they doing?
So they offer a whole range of services: residential, commercial appraisals, tax appeals, property management.
Oh, wow. So they're not just a brokerage.
They're not. They're a full-service real estate company.
Yeah, and I think that's really smart
Yeah.
because it provides a lot of stability.
Right.
If one part of the market slows down,
Right.
you've got other areas to fall back on.
Exactly. And their property management division is particularly interesting.
Oh, how so?
They manage all kinds of different properties.
Okay.
Residential, commercial, you name it.
So they've got a really diverse portfolio.
Yeah, they do. And that provides a really consistent stream of revenue.
Oh, yeah. Property management can be very lucrative.
It can. And Coakley's advice for brokers who are thinking about diversifying is to really do your homework.
Yeah.
Make sure you have the necessary education and expertise.
Right. You don't want to jump in unprepared.
Exactly. And make sure you have access to the right data for those new service lines.
Yeah. You got to know your numbers.
You do. And have a solid business plan. Maybe even consult with some third-party experts.
Yeah. It's always good to get outside advice,
It is.
especially when you're venturing into new territory.
Right.
So diversification is not something to take lightly.
It's not, but it can be a really effective strategy for long-term success.
It can.
All right, so let's wrap things up here. What are our key takeaways for this week?
Well, I think, one of the biggest things is that the industry is continuing to consolidate.
Right.
We're seeing mergers, we're seeing acquisitions.
Right.
And it's all about, gaining market share and scaling up.
Exactly. And we're also seeing some pretty significant leadership changes.
Yeah.
Which could signal, some big shifts in strategic direction for these companies.
Right. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and then of course there's the whole Rocket Redfin situation,
Right.
which is just a huge reminder of how quickly the landscape can change.
Yeah, and how important it is to be adaptable.
Right, and to really think about your value proposition.
Absolutely.
What sets you apart from the competition?
Yeah, because the competition's only going to get fiercer.
It is.
And I think, the key takeaway for me this week is that diversification is a really powerful strategy.
Yeah.
As Coakley Realty has shown,
Right.
having multiple service lines
Mm-hmm.
can provide a lot of stability and create new opportunities.
Exactly, and it's something that I think all broker owners should be considering.
Yeah. How can you expand your offerings
Right.
to better serve your clients and make your business more resilient?
Exactly.
It's all about staying ahead of the curve
It is.
and adapting to the changing market.
All right, well, that's all the time we have for this week's deep dive.
Yeah.
But, as always, we encourage you to, keep digging into these topics.
Yeah. Do your research
Think about how these trends might impact your business.
and make those strategic decisions.
Exactly. Thanks for listening, everyone.
See you next time.
If you're interested in your own personalized edition of The Wire, please visit us at thewire.fm/custom. We offer market-specific podcasts with all the latest real estate news and market analysis delivered to you weekly or monthly. Own your market with a personalized edition of The Wire, The Week in Real Estate. Thank you for listening.